still remember the way the room felt that night. Quiet, heavy, like the air was holding its breath. My mom had just passed away 2 weeks before, and nothing felt real. It was like our home had lost its heartbeat. The scent of her favorite jasmine candle still lingered in the hallway, and her slippers were still neatly placed by her bedside. My dad, who had always been the strong one, the calm anchor in every storm, hadn't said much since the funeral. He walked slower, sat longer in silence, and stared off into places I couldn't see. I figured he just needed time. We both did. But then one night, as I was clearing the dishes, he came into the kitchen, leaned on the counter, and said something that made me stop cold. His voice was calm, but his words hit like thunder. He asked me for something I never expected, something that felt completely out of place, especially at a time like this. At first, I thought I had misheard him. I even asked him to repeat it, thinking maybe grief had made him confused. But no, he knew exactly what he was saying, and he meant it. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just the shock of what he said, it was the way he said it. Like it was normal, like it made sense. But to me, it didn't. Not then. Not after everything we had just gone through. Not after losing Mom. I stared at him, unsure if I should laugh, cry, or yell. 100 thoughts raced through my mind. Was this some kind of test? Was he breaking under the pressure? Or was this a side of him I'd never seen before? The same man who had held my hand at the hospital, who stood silent and strong during the funeral, who whispered prayers by Mom's grave, was now asking me for something that felt wrong. Or maybe I just didn't understand it yet. I didn't answer him right away. I couldn't. All I could do was look at him and wonder, what would Mom say if she were still here? Would she agree with him? Would she be just as shocked as I was? Or had they talked about this before she passed? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over again. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had a choice to make. A choice that would either keep our family together or break it forever. I had to decide, do I follow his wishes, even if I didn't understand them? Or do I stand my ground and risk losing the only parent I had left? What I did next? Well, it wasn't easy. And it certainly wasn't what you'd expect. But before I tell you what happened, you need to understand how deep this story really goes. Because my dad's shocking request was only the beginning. And trust me, what followed will leave you speechless. The morning after my dad made that request, the house felt different. Maybe it was just me, carrying the weight of what he'd said the night before, but everything felt colder, quieter. I kept thinking maybe he would take it back. Maybe he'd laugh and say it was a moment of weakness or grief talking, but he didn't. In fact, when he came downstairs, he acted like nothing had happened. He asked me how I slept, offered to make coffee, like it was any normal day. But it wasn't normal, not even close. I kept watching him, his face, his eyes, his hands, trying to see if there was any sign of doubt or regret. But no, he looked calm, too calm, and that scared me even more. How could he be so okay with asking something like that? Something that felt like it didn't belong in our lives, especially not now, especially not after Mom. That request kept echoing in my mind, louder every time I tried to forget it. Growing up, my dad was the kind of man who didn't ask for much. He was always the provider, the quiet one, the one who stayed in the background while Mom handled most of the emotional stuff. She was the heart of the house, and he was the spine, silent but strong. Their relationship had this quiet balance. It wasn't full of loud affection or grand gestures, but it was steady, consistent, reliable. And that's why what he asked me shook me so deeply. It felt like a crack in everything I thought I understood about him. I started wondering if there were things about their relationship I never knew. Things they never talked about in front of me. Secrets they kept to protect me, or each other. And now, with Mom gone, maybe he felt free to ask for something he'd been holding in for a long time. But still, why now? And why me? I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not yet. I wasn't sure what I'd even say. Hey, my dad asked me for something completely unexpected after my mom passed away. And now I don't know what to do? Yeah, that wasn't exactly the kind of thing you drop into a conversation. I felt alone in it, like I was carrying a secret too heavy to share. So I did what I always do when I'm overwhelmed. I went for a walk. I ended up at the park where Mom used to take me when I was little. The place was nearly empty, just the wind brushing through the trees and a couple of birds fluttering by. I sat on our old bench, the one with her initials carved in the wood, and I tried to make sense of everything. But instead of answers, more questions came flooding in. What if this request wasn't a moment of grief, but something deeper, something planned? What if this was connected to something Mom never told me? I thought I knew everything about our family, but maybe I didn't. And just when I thought the situation couldn't get more confusing, I found something in Mom's old drawer later that night. Something that made his request even more complicated. Something that made me question everything all over again. It was just a small wooden box, something I had seen 100 times but never paid attention to. It sat tucked away in the corner of Mom's dresser drawer, underneath scarves and old greeting cards. I don't know what made me open it that night. Maybe it was the way my mind couldn't let go of Dad's words, or maybe something deeper was pulling me toward it. Inside, there were a few old photos, a couple of letters and envelopes that looked worn and yellowed, and one small notebook tied shut with a piece of faded blue ribbon. I hesitated. It felt wrong, like I was invading a space that belonged only to her, but something told me I needed to understand. I needed answers. I untied the ribbon and flipped open the notebook. The first few pages were simple entries, thoughts, memories, reminders. But as I read further, I realized this wasn't just a journal. It was a collection of secrets, things I never knew about her, about my dad, about our family. She had written about choices she had made, mistakes, doubts. And then I saw something that made my heart race. My name. She had written about me and about something she had never told me. Something connected to the very thing my dad had asked for. The pieces weren't clear yet, but it was enough to tell me this wasn't some random request. There was a history behind it, and maybe Mom knew it would come up one day. Maybe that's why she left this behind. I didn't know who to trust anymore. My dad had always been honest with me, or at least I thought so. But now, every conversation we'd ever had felt like it had another meaning. I started thinking back to little moments, things I had brushed off before. The late-night phone calls, the way he used to look at certain photos, his long drives alone on weekends. Were those signs? And then there was the question of why he waited until now. If this was something that had been on his mind for years, why didn't he bring it up before? Why wait until after Mom was gone? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the box beside me, flipping through pages of her words, trying to read between the lines. My heart was pounding, my head was spinning, and just when I thought I couldn't be more confused, my phone lit up with a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Someone connected to the past I thought was buried. Someone who might know exactly what my dad was really asking for. The message was short, just a name I hadn't seen in years, and a question that sent a chill through me. Can we talk? It's about your mom and your dad. It was from Elena, my mom's childhood friend. I remembered her from a few family gatherings, always warm and kind, but distant, like someone who didn't quite belong anymore. After a falling out between her and my parents, she had quietly disappeared from our lives. I hadn't thought of her in years, so why now? I didn't answer right away. I stared at the message, heart racing, wondering what she could possibly know. And more importantly, why she would reach out just days after my dad's strange request. It couldn't be a coincidence. That night, I finally replied. We agreed to meet at a small cafe outside of town, where no one would recognize us. I didn't tell my dad. I couldn't. Not until I knew what I was walking into. When I arrived, Elena was already there, sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking. She looked older, a little tired, like she'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. When she saw me, she smiled gently, but her eyes told a different story. Without much small talk, she got straight to the point. She told me that before Mom passed, they had reconnected in secret. And during those meetings, Mom had shared things, fears, regrets, truths she hadn't told anyone else, especially not me. Then she paused and asked the one question I hadn't been ready for. Has your dad asked you for it yet? My stomach dropped. I didn't even need to say anything. She already knew. She leaned in and lowered her voice. Your mom didn't want this for you. She said it would change everything, that it would tear you apart if it ever came to light. But your dad, he's convinced it's the right thing. I sat frozen, the cafe noises around me fading to a blur. I asked her what it was, what exactly my dad wanted from me. But she shook her head. That's not for me to say. It's something you have to face yourself. But if you go through with it, nothing will ever be the same again. I left the cafe feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, with no idea what was waiting on the other side. The secrets, the journal, the message. They were all pointing to something big, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. But the truth was coming whether I wanted it or not. And the closer I got to it, the more dangerous it felt. I drove home from the cafe in silence, hands tight on the steering wheel. Elena's words looping in my head like a broken record. Your mom didn't want this for you. What did she mean by that? Why would my dad be pushing for something that Mom had been so afraid of? And what exactly did she think would tear me apart? I had so many questions, and not a single answer felt safe anymore. When I got home, the house was dark. Dad's car was in the driveway, but the lights were off and the front door was slightly open. That was unusual. My dad was careful about things like that. Always had been. I stepped inside slowly, calling out to him, but there was no answer. My heart started to pound harder. Maybe he'd just gone for a walk or fallen asleep with his headphones in, but the silence felt too heavy, too unnatural. I checked the living room, the kitchen, his bedroom. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. The drawer in his desk was open, and papers were scattered on the floor. Among them, I recognized the edge of a photo album. It was the one we hadn't opened in years, full of pictures from before I was born. It had always stayed closed, like it was meant to be forgotten. But now, it looked like someone had gone through it in a hurry. Curious and a little nervous, I picked it up. And that's when I saw it. Tucked behind a photo of my parents on their wedding day was a letter. It was addressed to me, written in my mom's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first line hit me like a punch. If you're reading this, then your father has already told you. She went on to describe something I never imagined. Something that explained his strange request, and yet somehow made it worse. It wasn't about money or family heirlooms. It wasn't even about fulfilling her final wishes. It was about someone I didn't know existed. Someone connected to us by blood. A secret that had been buried for decades. My mom confessed that before she married my dad, she had a child. One she gave up and never told me about. That child, my half-sibling, had recently reached out to her before she passed. And the thing my dad wanted from me? He wanted me to meet them, accept them, possibly even bring them into our lives. But that wasn't the twist. The real shock was the name she wrote at the end of the letter. It was someone I knew, someone I had met, someone who had already been in my life, just not in the way I thought. I dropped the letter, hands shaking, breath caught in my throat. Suddenly everything made sense and didn't, all at once. The past wasn't just creeping in anymore. It had fully arrived. And now I had to decide whether I would open the door wider or slam it shut before it was too late. The name at the bottom of the letter kept echoing in my mind like it had been carved into my thoughts. Alec. My friend Alec. Someone I'd known for over a year. We met at a community event after Mom passed, both of us grieving different losses, and somehow became close fast. He had always seemed to understand me more than most people. Now I knew why. He wasn't just someone I knew. He was my brother. The days that followed blurred together. I couldn't bring myself to talk to my dad right away. I needed time to breathe, to absorb the truth, but when I finally confronted him, the look on his face told me everything. He already knew Alec. He had met him on purpose. That was the shocking thing he wanted from me. He wanted me to accept Alec, to bring him into our lives, and to carry out a promise Mom had made before she died. She had wanted us to reconnect as a family, even after everything. Even after years of silence and secrecy. I didn't know how to tell you, my dad said quietly, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. But I promised your mother I would try, that I would fix what she never got the chance to. His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard before. She met him before she passed, just once, and she told me he reminded her of you. Same eyes, same quiet strength. She wanted you two to find each other. The walls around my heart were shaking. All this time, I thought he'd asked something selfish, but it wasn't about him at all. It was about Mom, about giving her peace, about mending a part of her story that had stayed broken for too long. Later that night, I met Alec at the park bench, our bench. I handed him the letter. He didn't speak at first, just read every word, slowly, carefully, his eyes glossing over with tears. She wrote this for you, I said, but I think maybe she wrote it for both of us. We sat there in silence for a long time, two people shaped by the same mother, strangers somehow connected by blood and memory. For the first time in weeks, I felt something settle inside me. Not peace exactly, but a start. Just when I thought the hardest part was over, Alec turned to me and said something that changed everything again. There's something I need to tell you too. I didn't just meet Mom before she passed. I met her with someone else, a man, and I think he's not who you think your father is. My breath caught. What are you saying? I whispered. Alec looked at me with a kind of sorrow that ran deep. I don't think we have the same dad. And I think your mom was keeping more secrets than either of us were ready for. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling again. And this time, the truth might be even harder to face. I sat there frozen, staring at Alec as his words settled like cold air between us. It was too much. Another secret. Another twist. But somehow, this time, it didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like the final missing piece of a puzzle I'd been trying to solve since the day Mom passed away. We talked late into the night about his conversation with Mom, the man he saw with her, and the things she hinted at, but never fully revealed. There was no way to know the full truth now. Mom had taken that with her, but what we had was enough. In the days that followed, I sat down with my dad again. We talked honestly, without blame. He told me he had always known Alec existed, but agreed with Mom's decision to keep it quiet. She wasn't ready back then, and maybe neither was he. Life had pulled them in different directions, and the silence became easier than the pain. But in the end, love brought it full circle. Her final wish wasn't just for us to meet. It was for healing, for forgiveness, for connection. Alec and I decided to stay in each other's lives, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. We shared the same mother, yes, but more than that, we shared the weight of her memory and the hope of starting something new. He never pushed me to see him as a brother, and I never forced him to fit into a role. We just showed up, open, real, unsure, but willing. What I learned through it all was that families are never as simple as we think. Sometimes, the people we trust the most are carrying their own quiet stories. And sometimes, love means forgiving those stories, even when they hurt. My mom had her reasons, and my dad, he did too. At the core of everything was love. Complicated, imperfect, but still love. In the end, what my dad asked for wasn't shocking at all. It was brave. It was honest. And it was exactly what Mom would have wanted. Now, when I visit her grave, I don't just feel loss. I feel legacy. I feel the pieces of a story that finally came together. And beside me, sometimes, stands someone I never expected to call family. But I do now. Because family isn't always about where you start. Sometimes, it's about what you choose to hold on to in the end.